Hi everybody, my name is Jason Bate. I'm a student advisor here at Berklee Music and also an alumni of the Berklee College of Music in Boston. Before I introduce our guest today, I'd like to give you a rundown of how the event's going to happen. So we'll have about 20 minutes of conversation with our guests. Then immediately after, we'll have 2 minutes of time to answer any questions you may have. So throughout our conversation here, please be sure to send your questions in, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Our guest instructor, Caroline Harvey, is an assistant professor in the liberal arts department at the Berklee College of Music here in Boston. She's also the faculty advisor and has been an integral part in establishing the poetry performance minor curriculum. In addition, she coaches the award-winning Berklee Slam team and is the Push Cart Prize nominee. I'm going to say that again, Push Cart Prize nominee. Caroline received a BFA in theater at Boston University, class of '98, and later obtained a master's in world arts and cultures from UCLA. Caroline has performed with such artists as Alicia Keys, Mos Def, John Legend, Melissa Farrick, and many others. Caroline was featured in 2 documentaries and appeared in Season 5 of HBO's Def Poetry. Just recently, Caroline received a grant from the U.S. Embassy to perform and teach poetry in Serbia. Welcome, Caroline.
Hi, thanks. Hi.
So now I understand you were handpicked by Pat Pattison himself to teach 2 of the courses that we'll be discussing today, the poetry writing class and Finding Your Voice course. How long have you been writing poetry yourself?
I can't remember a time I didn't write poetry. And, the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is I remember when I was growing up, I had this bedroom that had this closet in it that was like a half closet. It was like 3 feet tall. And so I was, short enough to fit in. And somehow I got my hands on a typewriter at, 6. And I would lock myself away in this closet office and take myself very seriously and write plays and poems and screenplays, and then, of course, charge the family to come and see them in the living room.
Shows.
Yes, they would have to pay to attend. Absolutely.
Very nice.
Yeah, so I had an uncle who's a poet. We read a lot of Shakespeare growing up, so it was just kind of a part of the household. And I grew up a little bit remote, so like many creative people, was just living a lot in my imagination, and that's how it came out.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So now the course is, what's it like to be handpicked by the Pat Pattison?
Oh, the Pat Pattison, my dear friend, my mentor. I just adore him. I was chosen to be an artist in residence at Berklee College of Music, I guess now 3 years ago. So I came in as a poet to sit in on classes, do performances, teach workshops. And I'm a geek for all things artistic, so I went to the chair of the liberal arts department at the time, Camille Colatosti, and I said, can I sit in on some classes? What's going on here at Berklee? And she had a smile, a fantastic smile, and people who know Pat often smile this way before they mention him. It, kind of went halfway up, and she said, you should probably sit in on Pat's classes. Let me give him a call. And I kind of got nervous. What am I getting into? And she said, don't be late. All right.
I'll call you out.
So, right. So I showed up day 1, and I sat there while he went around the room and met all of the students. And he got to me, and he sort of looked at me, and he said, so who are you? And I think it was right then. I was like, oh, this is forever. We're going to be friends forever. So I sat in on his classes for a year and a half, sat in on them, kind of over and over again. And it was a revolutionary experience. And the thing that, Pat and I really clicked, because he's got a very particular sense of humor that I share. And those of you who know him know what I'm talking about. Those of you who know me know what I'm talking about. So we just clicked right away, and there was it was like just momentum. It was just sort of like a trapeze. And I sat in on his poetry, on his lyric writing, and the first time I sat in on his lyric writing class, I was nervous, out of my mind. Many people who show up at Berklee, it's just an unbelievable environment and so much talent, so much passion. So I sat in the corner in this dark room, hat, and I just watched him teach about language and about words and about how to use the intellect and use a toolbox to really move emotion. And I was like in this weepy just state of amazement, and I kind of walked home in a daze. I felt, like brain drunk. And I got home and I shot him an email that was just like a whole bunch of letters and exclamation points and like stars, and said, "What just happened?" And he was like, "Yep, see you in a few days." So we just, from there, we're just really on the same page and really connected around art.
Now, did you sit on any of his poetry writing classes?
All of them.
Okay.
Numerous times.
So that takes us to the first course, poetry writing class, that we also have online at Berklee Music. One element of that class that I think is very important for songwriters, poets, is rhyming.
Yeah.
Rhyme schemes, perfect rhymes, imperfect rhymes. If you could talk a bit about rhyming.
Well, I can tell you that that was my area of strongest weakness. So it was my biggest and most obvious weakness, made even worse because I didn't realize it. So I thought I knew something about rhyme, and I brought in a rhyming assignment to Pat, and he was like, "Oh, honey, I really love you, but no, no." And I was like, "What?" So the way that Pat and I approach rhyme does so many things. What it really is at its core is this, right? We are creating songs and poems to tell a story and to create an emotional journey, right? So those songs and those poems that we love them because they hit us in the heart, and we feel like that was about me, that's my life, or I just lived through that moment. And they're these really kind of revolutionary experiences for our whole system. But actually, it's not magic. Right? So these songwriters and these poets are working really thoughtfully with craft. So the way that we're looking at rhyme that I really didn't get, and now I get and love, is that rhyme moves emotion. So really basically, with a rhyme scheme, I can either give you what you want as my listener and make you feel stable and happy and like the world is fine, or I can completely subvert your expectation and make you feel chaotic, unstable, and weary, depending on what my song is about. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to test this guy and you guys. So here I'm going to give you a rhyme, okay? Thud, blood, crash. What are you waiting for?
Splash.
Splash, right? You're waiting for that next sound. Thud, blood, crash, thrash. You're waiting for that. That's what you want. That's your expectation. I give that to you. You feel happy. Right? Those are the songs or the poems or the choruses where they're singable instantly because you feel like you know what's happening. Those of you that speak a more musical language, right? That's the tonic function. That's we land right where we want and where we expect. Now, what if I said to you, thud, blood, crash, hope? All of a sudden I'm subverting your expectations, right? So then I get to create a different feeling where, one, you're really noticing that word, not because it's what you want it to be, but because it surprises you. So you have an opportunity there to create a highlight, right? Get the reader or the listener to look exactly at what you want them to see. And you can create, a sunny, happy day where everyone feels, sing-songy and in love, right? Great pop song where boy meets girl, they live happily ever after. Or I can subvert that expectation, leave you on the subdominant, right? Leave you sort of wondering, wait, we're going somewhere, but I don't know exactly what's happening. And then we can create a totally different mood. So it's really the way we're looking at rhyme is how does thoughtful craft create an emotional state?
Can you give us a few examples of maybe a perfect rhyme scheme that isn't so effective or isn't so thoughtful, where you have a consecutive set of words that rhyme perfectly, fit perfectly in a song or in a poem, but won't give me that experience you're trying to set up?
Well, yeah, and that reminds me of how great this work is at avoiding cliche also, right? Because what do you want to rhyme with fire?
Higher, tire.
Desire.
Right?
Exactly. Right? So one, we're really working to avoid cliche, and perfect rhyme, like fire and desire. I mean, when you hear that, it's pretty stable,
Yeah.
Fire, desire. Well, I can't use thrash because that's pretty unstable. So fire, desire. Transpire. Nice. Are you a songwriter?
I fake it.
I take it, right. So when we use a perfect rhyme, we create a feeling of stability where fire and desire rhyme so perfectly, so we're sort of landed there, right? We're not really moving anywhere. Sure. We're not going anywhere. But if I start to mess with that rhyme scheme a little bit, where I say fire, blood, desire, right, then we can go anywhere, right? Do we want to go transpire? Do we want to rhyme with thud or blood? Do we want to bring that back in? So we start to look at ways that we can build stability or instability. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens a lot, certainly what happened for me, right? My main craft is poetry, and I work a ton with songwriters, is that we go for the perfect rhyme because it's what we know. So, but yet we might be writing a song or a poem about something really unstable, a heartbreak, death, politics, something that doesn't have a neat and tidy end. But we're putting a perfect rhyme on it, so it's got a neat and tidy feeling. So we're missing that potential emotional journey. And the way that Pat and now I are looking at rhyme is, how can we create either a totally unexpected rhyme, or we can start to look at imperfect rhymes, slant rhymes, consonance rhymes. So you're getting fire and, maybe you're getting some of those sounds, but you're not getting that perfect desire rhyme.
This brings us to a question from Eco.
Oh, hello, Eco.
In the discussion of rhyme,
Mm-hmm.
and this could be applied to many questions, but I think it's really appropriate here. Any suggestions to foreign students who are not English with a different native language or mother tongue? So you were just talking about.
Yes. I love that question. I'm really glad you asked. I've now in my second or third term teaching. Teaching at Berklee Music is so fun. It's just all a party. I don't even remember how long I've been doing it. But I've worked now with a fair number of students who are chiming in from all over, some English-speaking countries abroad and some not. So one, God bless the internet, right? Because you can find anything. So this was actually, I'm born English-speaking. That's my main language. And I was really screwing it up. Tragically, in that we are tempted to do what's called an unstressed rhyme or a weak syllable rhyme. So I was rhyming, see with lonely. See with lonely, right? So I'm thinking on paper, lonely ends in that E sound, but see, so it rhymes. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't, because when we say the word lonely, we hear lone. We don't hear the li.
The emphasis
lonely,
is on long,
right?
Yeah.
Strong, weak, lonely. So see and lonely feel totally unconnected. Mm-hmm. So that is sometimes an issue for a non-English speaking or someone for whom English is not your primary language, and know that it's also a problem for people who English is a primary language. So what we work with is actually looking a word up in the dictionary and looking at the stress marks for where that long swipe is. That means the word is stressed, and where the short dash is, which means that part of the word is unstressed. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a trick, Echo, and there are many more ways to look at it. Rhyming dictionaries are great. There's great software out there. And the thing that's really fun about the online course, one of the reasons I love being a part of it, is that you have a community of people who are looking at your work. Mm-hmm. So you have all these friends that you make that are like, hey, lonely and see don't rhyme. You're like, oh, right. So, I hope that helps a little bit.
I think a cool thing about foreign speakers, foreign languages, you kind of have a different rhythmic approach that you can add to your writing, whereas with us English speakers, it's not as rhythmically sounding,
right.
So you can look at Spanish words or some other languages.
Yeah, I mean, it also, that answer I gave is if you're planning to write in English.
Yeah.
But certainly you can be working in your own language, or, what's happening so much now is working in hybrid.
Yeah.
Some kind of a
crossover.
Mixture. Yeah.
So let's move on to the second course, Finding Your Voice.
Ooh, okay.
And the topic I'd like for you to discuss is metaphor. There are plenty metaphors I can name off hand.
Yes. Are you being thrown back to 5th grade English right now?
Yep.
Yes. I won't quiz you on the difference between a metaphor and a simile.
Please don't.
Which most of us were taught wrong, by the way.
Well, so describe a metaphor.
Well, the thing about metaphor is that it's a collision, right? It's two things that are seemingly unrelated, and all of a sudden we throw them together, and now we've got all these textures. So the way we're talking about metaphor in this course, which was such a revolution for me. I mean, I come to this work, and now I'm so embedded in this work because I thought I knew something. And, you know, it's sort of like discovering your church has like 3,000 other rooms that you never saw. So metaphor, you know, here's one that I love that actually came from Pat's book, which is great, and I did some writing on this one, right? So you have two things that seem sort of unrelated, right? Falling in love, Las Vegas. I mean, maybe those things could happen at the same time, actually. Be careful. Be careful the next time you're in Vegas. But falling in love and Las Vegas, right? So you have these two things that are seemingly unrelated, and then we create a collision where we can put them together. So we can talk about it like in a musical language, which is sort of, we call in the key of. So let's say we're in the key of Las Vegas. So what are all the things that happen in Las Vegas, right? All the things we associate in a sense-bound way. So if I say Las Vegas to you, what comes to mind?
Bright lights, noise.
Right, bright lights, good. You went right to noise. So the clinking of coins in the slot, the shrieks of winning, the sobs of losing, right? What's happening in the body? All that anticipation, the goosebumps coming up, you know, maybe some sweat on your brow when you go up to the high rollers table.
Heartbeat.
Right, maybe you're a little drunk because the more you gamble, you get the free drinks. Again, be careful. So that's our key, right? Those are all the things we have available to us, all these sensual things related to Las Vegas. But what we're going to write about through that lens or in that key is falling in love. So I'm going to grab some of that language, and I'm going to talk about, you know, the first time I saw him, I felt sweat on my brow and wondered if the gamble would be worth it. How much was I risking? Her smile glittered like like the biggest win of chips at the high rollers table, right? So then all of a sudden we have all this information that we can color this topic. So, and then we can obviously reverse it, right? So we're doing a ton of really specific metaphor work and creating all these collisions that just kind of blow your mind. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
All right, good. Yeah. I want your writing assignment as soon as we're done.
All right. Let's do another metaphor.
Okay, here's another one that I really love. Ocean, angry God. Okay, right? So let's look at, let's write in the key of angry God about the ocean. So what do we have available to us when we talk about angry God? What does an angry God do?
Thunder. Maybe.
Thunders, exactly. Thunders, bellows, growls, swallows whole cities, rages, foams at the mouth, has vendettas, has grudges, is all-knowing, right? So we have all of this stuff now available to us that we can write about the ocean. The ocean is an angry God, okay? That's fine enough. But let's move on. The ocean thundered. The ocean growled. The ocean had a vendetta against this city that it would never let go of. So all of a sudden, we've got all this information that we can use. So, yeah, the brain says, well, you know, the ocean's not an angry God. It's an ocean, right? But when we start opening ourselves to these unlikely collisions, they can happen in any way, right? The rude ocean, the stubborn ocean, the falling in love ocean, the Las Vegas ocean, right? We can go from any of those lenses, and all of a sudden we have all this material that bubbles up from which to write about, which is, I think, in all of my experience as a writer, really unique. Questions coming in about metaphors?
Yeah. Let's see.
Any angry gods writing in?
No. We have a question from Robert, and
Okay.
His question is, most lyrics always have a message, or could just... We're going to come back to that one.
Okay. Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger, yeah.
Subdominant function. We're in motion. Where are we going to go?
As cultures continue to integrate, do you agree that our palette of vocabulary would naturally expand, just as English itself has historically observed other words and expressions?
What was the beginning again? As our culture
Continues to integrate, do you agree that our palette of vocabulary will naturally expand as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it already has so much, colloquialisms and slang and cultural responses become, especially with the internet, things become so quickly absorbed. And the first place we look for what's cutting edge, what's hot, what's cool, what are the most vibrant, what is the most vibrant expression, we're going to look to arts for that. We're going to look to music, we're going to look to poetry, we're going to look to visual arts to sort of pull out what is brand new. At the same time, I think I'm of the mind that there aren't too many new ideas, right? When it comes down to it, we're all writing about our own broken hearts, our losses, our wins. We're writing about who are we, what is this body, what am I doing here? We all come back to that. But yeah, I think, especially as cultures merge and grow, and with, I keep saying this, but it's so prevalent with internet culture. There's words in the last 6 months that seem to have been made up that I'm now using regularly.
Sure.
Yeah.
The first that come to mind are usually I am, speak, like LOL, JK, things like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that'll ever be integrated in our...
I don't let people use that in their assignments.
Okay.
But I do it.
But you're hearing it in songwriting now.
You are,
They're
definitely.
in songs.
And I think there's a place for that. I think there's a place both for using that and for commenting on that, right? A part of our job as writers is to keep track of what's happening in society, right?
So stay current.
Yeah, the reason we know about so much that happened in wars and in genocides and in ages past is because we're looking at what Picasso was painting. We're looking at what Yeats was writing about. So we're going to be looking, our future generations will be looking to that. So yeah, I think we almost have a responsibility to.
So I'll go back to the first question that I sort of stumbled on.
Okay.
Sorry, Robert. But it kind of relates to the message you were speaking about earlier when conveying in lyrics. So this question is, most lyrics always have a message, or could just beautiful rhythm and phonetics be enough?
Oh, I love that question. That's from Robert. I love that question. That's one of the first challenges that Pat gave me was stop writing from an idea and write me something from rhythm. And I said words to him and in my head that I won't repeat here. I was like, ah! It's one of the reasons I love Pat so much is that it takes a lot to rattle me. And in the best way, he tosses me. So I always thought that a poem had to be a great idea. And if I got that, then I won. Let me just rack my brain and think of the most inventive idea I can. And if I just get that down on paper, that's enough. Or some big message, right? But what is true is that that's not enough alone. Some of the great songs, right? Imagine, John Lennon. Those messages are out. We hear that message. Imagine, essentially the message is what, right? Imagine a beautiful place where there's no war and we all love each other. It's not a new idea, certainly. You know what I mean? Not at all throughout time. And surely there are many, many other songs and poems and art pieces out there that are expressing that idea. Why has that one risen to popular culture? Why does that song continue on? And it continues on because the thought process, the intellectual process of lyric writing, rhyme scheme, lyric setting, so where is that lyric on top of the music? Or, where is it slightly off? Where does the rhyme scheme give you what you want so you feel stable? Where does the rhyme scheme stop you so you feel chaotic and angsty and needy inside? All of those rhythmic tools are just as important as the message. So yes, you can certainly just do one or the other. I can just write you something with meaningful content. I can just write you something with beautiful rhythm. And I did end up doing that assignment for Pat, actually. And it revolutionized my entire writing scheme. It was the first time I successfully wrote a non-autobiographical poem. Which is kind of embarrassing to admit. But him forcing me to do that, a whole story came out about a woman in the ER the woman was sitting in the ER with a broken cheekbone and blood coming down her face, waiting to be seen. And as the poem moves on, you realize that she's a domestic abuse survivor. And by the end of the poem, I did not resolve the rhythm. Right, so we work a lot with rhythm, and I did not resolve the rhythm at the end because Pat said write from rhythm, and I said, okay, well, I'm always resolving the rhythm. Everything's always perfect, and I want symmetry. But all of a sudden I find myself writing about domestic abuse, and do I want my readers to feel like this woman survives and is going to be fine and it wraps up pretty, or do I want them to wonder? And I wanted them to wonder: is she going to make it? Will she be saved? Right, because domestic violence is real, and I didn't want to wrap it up pretty. So I did not resolve the rhythm. And, you're in a rhythm, and all of a sudden it's like, and the poem ends. So in a gut level, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And on a content level, reading the language, you feel that woman's sort of reaching out, and you don't know if she'll have help. So I think it needs to be both. I hope that helps.
We have another question, probably time for another one or two. This question is from Steve. He wants to know, do you think it's good to be vague about subject and lyrics?
Ooh, nice question. Pat and I have a joke. Poetry, obscure, therefore profound, right? So there's this idea that the more lofty and ambiguous and big word sounding the poem is, right? The more people don't get it, the better poem it must be. And I remember feeling that way. Like, that poem is so confusing. I don't get it. It must be really smart. And I think there's room for that, right? There's room for ambient, obscure, vague work. But my take on it is this, right? We choose, we're here, I'm here because I both chose and for me, and it doesn't have to be true for you, but for me, my work as a writer feels connected to my spiritual life, right? So that's part of it for me. The other part is I'm here in this world and I'm choosing this as my vocation and my work. So for me, my responsibility is to communicate something clear and relevant and urgent and moving. And my job is to make sure that I'm heard and that idea gets out there to start being a catalyst for things, right? That term MC, which we throw around in hip-hop all the time, we forget what it means. It means master of ceremony, meaning it's my job to move a ceremony, to transform you, if you're my audience, you, a room, an arena, to transform from one place to the other. So if I want to move something in a direction or create a shared experience of an emotion experience, I have to access every possible tool at my disposal to make that happen. So if I allow myself to be vague, for me, I'm not sure what's getting moved. So I don't think that I work much in vagaries or ambiguity. And my rule that I give folks is, mostly I'm working with poems, and I say, give me one place in this poem where everybody, no matter what, knows what the F is going on. So you can do all kinds of other stuff, but if there's not one place where we're all really clear, then we've kind of missed out on some of the potential. And for a song for a poem, that might be a title, right? Because it's the first thing everyone sees, so it can start to layer down. And for a song, maybe it's the hook. Good question, though.
All right, we'll do one more.
Okay.
This one will be brief. This question is from Erica. She wants to know, can mixed metaphors be used effectively, or would you always avoid them?
Mixed metaphors. I'm going to take a guess because there's sometimes people mean a few different things. Can she type in, like in live time? Not really.
Probably not.
All right, so I'm just going to kind of guess on that one. So based on not being totally clear which kind of mixed metaphor you mean. Like I said, I'm a geek, so my encyclopedia of metaphor knowledge just unfurled in my head, and I'll try to be brief. Both Pat and I would say that, rules, whatever, it's about tools. It's about what can you access from your whole being and brain to make happen what you want to happen. So what are you trying to make happen, right? Do you want people to get a feeling from your, let's go with something basic. You're writing a love song, you're writing a pop love song that you want to encourage your audience to feel happy and have a great day and bounce around, and have Sunday morning dance parties while cleaning the house. You just want it to feel good. So what do you want to do there? You want to be clear. You want them to get it right away. You want regular rhymes. You want clear metaphors, because that's the vibe you're going for. Or are you writing a concept album? Are you following a character through an entire story? I worked with a student last term who's working on a concept book of poems. I think he does concept albums as well, but he has one character, this fabulous otherworldly character that's getting tracked through all these poems, sonnets and all kinds of poems. So there's room there for the metaphors to get deeper and more complicated. So I think what's true is we have to know, it's like if you're going to build a bookcase, you got to know what you're building before you go buy your tools and your material, right? You're not going to go, well, maybe you would and it would be kind of fun. But if you actually want the bookcase built, you're going to make a list of your materials. Mm-hmm. You're not just going to show up at Home Depot and say, I guess I have some wood and, I need these light switches are pretty and let me buy this toilet seat and these blinds. And then you go home and you try to build stuff. Who knows what you're going to get? If you wanted a crazy sculpture, that would be fine. But if you were building a bookcase, it wouldn't be fine. So I think it really depends on what you want to do, which sometimes takes some time to figure out.
All right. Thanks so much, Caroline.
You are welcome so much.
Thanks
for hanging with me.